When we started off with our worksheet here, you began with the data table. All right. Now, the thing that might have been a little different with this data table was that the axes were flopped, weren't they? Okay. So the actual feature or trait was on the left-hand side, and the actual organism or species was on the top. So we don't know how this is going to be. Okay? If you get something like this and have to do it on your test, your end of course, we don't know how it's going to be. Okay? Sometimes, too, just so you see it here, sometimes you might see like zeros written in here. Okay? That 0 would mean that no, that particular animal, or that particular, in this case, animal, does not have it. So if I'm reading this right here, okay, if it says it right here, I read that 0, I say, okay, a shark doesn't have a placenta. Sometimes instead of an X, you might see a plus and say, okay, here is a plus for my shark, so yes, my shark does have a vertebrae. So you could see them in pluses, you could see them as zeros. Okay, ours right now are just going X's and minuses. So the very first thing I asked you to do when we were doing this is that we needed to make a Venn diagram based on this data. So what is, looking at this, what is our biggest circle and what animal goes in that biggest circle? Okay? What's our biggest circle and what animal goes there? Okay, the vertebrae and the shark is the animal. Why? Why did you say that, Fletcher? Okay, why did you say that? Every animal has the vertebrae. Okay, so we're going to put circles inside of that biggest circle. So the biggest circle has to be one that everything has. Now, why did you put shark? The shark only has the vertebrae of these 4 traits. Okay, so looking at this, the shark doesn't have a placenta. The shark doesn't have mammary glands. The shark doesn't have 2 pair of limbs. So, as I'm moving on here, my first circle has the shark with vertebrae. What's my next circle then, Jamie? What's my next circle going to be? 2 pair of limb, and the bullfrog goes with the 2 pair of limb. Now let me ask you this. Okay? Does the shark have 2 pair of limb? Does the shark have 2 pair of limb? No, because he's outside of the circle. Does the bullfrog have a vertebrae? Yes, because the bullfrog is inside of the circle. Okay? Jonathan, what's my next one? Mammary glands, and you put what? I didn't understand. Kangaroo. Mammary glands in the kangaroo. Let me ask you this. Does a shark have mammary glands? No, because he's not inside the circle. Does a kangaroo have 2 pair of limbs? Yes, because the kangaroo's inside that circle, correct? Sydney, what's my next one? Placenta, and what was the one you put with that? Human. Okay? Placenta with the human. Now, does a human have a mammary gland? Yes. Does a human have two pair of limbs? Yes. Does a human have a vertebrae? Yes. Okay. Does a bullfrog have a placenta? Does a bullfrog have a placenta? No. Does the placenta is right here? Is the bullfrog in that circle? No. Okay. Does a kangaroo have a placenta? No. Okay. So now we've made our Venn diagram. Can we make our cladogram from our Venn diagram? What are we going to start with? How do we start this thing? Zoe, how do we start this cladogram? Okay, you have placenta. Okay, if you have placenta first, you probably made it backwards. Okay, where do we start with? With the biggest circle, right? The biggest circle goes down on the bottom. So we're starting with what characteristic? Vertebrae. Okay? We're starting with vertebrae. So what is our first animal that we're going to put on our cladogram? Dylan says a shark. Would you agree? All right. So I put in my arrow. Here comes the shark. Linda, what's my next characteristic I'm going to put on there? Two pair of limbs. Okay? What has a vertebrae and two pair of limbs? Okay? A bullfrog does. There's a couple of things, right? Okay? But we're looking at what has a vertebrae and two pair of limbs, and that's were the only two characteristics. And that was the bullfrog. Okay? What trait comes after the bullfrog then, Brandon? Mammary glands. Okay? What animal was the first one we had that showed the mammary glands? A kangaroo. Okay? Finally, our last trait was going to be a placenta. And I could draw an arrow like this, or I could have probably put humans down here at this arrow. I could have done either way. Okay? So basically, what these things are is this is time, this arrow. So this is the furthest back, and this is the most recent up here. So what is the most recent, based on this cladogram, what is the most recent ancestor to the human? The kangaroo. So which one of these, if I'd ask you, what is the most closely related organism on this cladogram to a human, you would say the kangaroo. What is the common ancestor of all of these organisms? Okay. What is the common ancestor of all of these organisms? Huh? We can't say that because we don't know, based on this cladogram. You're probably right, okay? Because we all have to start somewhere. But based on this cladogram, what is the common ancestor to everything? What came first? The shark, right? The shark. Now, if I would ask you this, based on the cladogram, what's the difference between the bullfrog and the kangaroo? What would you tell me? The bullfrog does not have mammary glands. The kangaroo does. Okay? So are we all right with reading that one? Okay, good. Good.